Thanks for tuning in to First City Focus. I'm your host, Nicole Carey. On this episode, we're giving you a first-hand look at two new digital series we're rolling out online. We'll show you the premiere episode of History Vault, which takes you through the origin story of the property in Knox County known as the Poor Farm. Find out how this facility started and what it has been used for over the last 142 years. Then we'll debut our other new digital series, Trails and Crossroads. We'll show you Indiana's very first state park. We'll look at how this park helped set the standard for our state parks more than 100 years ago. Our in-studio guest, Chaze Patrick, will join us to explain how INvets is working in service of Indiana's veterans across the state. We'll find out how this organization is bridging workforce gaps for those who have served their country and how employers can utilize INvets services within their operation. Join us for these stories and more right now on First City Focus. It goes without saying that our area is steeped in history, some which dates back well over hundreds of years. That's why we've created a new digital series called History Vault. In this series, we are going to explore different stories of historical significance throughout our area, some that you might know, and hopefully many tales you aren't as familiar with. We're starting out our series by sharing the history of a facility that has been in and out of the news many times over the last decade. As it now seems, the effort to keep it standing has come to an end.
It's not haunted. It is not haunted.
Just outside the city limits of Vincennes sits the historic structure on Hart Street Road, which can be found today in much disrepair. But back when it was first constructed, it was held in high regard. This property has been referred to as the Knox County Poor Farm, the Poor Asylum, or the Knox County Infirmary. The mission of the county was to fulfill the provisions set in the state constitution of 1816 that each county should care for its poor or indigent population.
In 1821, Knox County officials built 2 log cabins over on Bunker Hill as the first attempt at providing this service. In 1851, they constructed a simple 3-story brick structure at that location, which burnt down at the hands of an arsonist in 1881.
But out of the ashes was born a new effort to construct something not only new, but something lavish, right here on Hart Street Road.
People in that time period were very proud of their county facilities. So they hired Joseph Frick, a noted Evansville architect, to design it in the high fashion of the time, Italianate style, with the bracketing under the eaves. It had a tower and the arched windows and all. And it was put up in 1882, pretty quick time by our standards. And it wasn't just the building, it was also a farm. And the theory was that the inhabitants of this would be able to work on the farm and it would be self-sustaining, so it wouldn't cost the county anything to operate. Of course, that never really happened because these people were, many of them, mentally unsound, or they had injuries like they were missing an arm or a leg, or had emphysema or any number of things, or you had widows with their children, single women with their children, all that sort of thing. So it never quite did that, but it was one of the points of pride to show this off to people as being an example of something that Knox County could be proud of. We have this Poor Asylum that's in the latest fashion.
The Poor Asylum operated here until 1923, when the county turned the property over to Purdue University to serve as a model farm, a precursor to Purdue's current extension system. But what happened to the Poor Farm residents at that time? The county moved them to a building in town on South First Street, until that property was chosen for an exciting development plan.
In 1934, they were going to build the Clark Memorial and they were going to clear that ground. And so the county came back, they wanted their building back. So Purdue turned it back over to them, and then it was operated again as the poorhouse or the poor asylum.
While the property resumed taking care of those who were in need, services were also starting up spanning a few decades that eventually rendered the poor farm unnecessary.
Provisions were being made for the poor and indigent and incapable. You had mental facilities for those that were, as they called it, feeble-minded back in those days. And you had pensions for widows and children. And you had an orphanage that would take care of them too. And there were a number of things. So by the 1950s and 60s, there weren't nearly as many people out here as there had been originally.
So that transition was very important when you think about what happened in the 70s and even into the 80s with housing programs at the federal level with HUD and the establishment of both the city and the county having housing services. In fact, we're one of the few counties in the state that have both a city and a county housing department, but all those things made that type of programming obsolete because more housing was becoming available for people. Other things were being built.
Mark Hill worked as a social worker in Knox County for decades. And as he shares, this structure isn't just a piece of history for him.
So when I first started as a social worker for the Samaritan Center, I was working with both adults and kids at the time. And one of my very first clients was actually the same aged person as myself. And he was one of the last residents of the old poorhouse. And so I would go out and visit him on site and actually sat outside on the steps and would kind of talk to him. And at that time, that programming was starting to kind of come to its conclusion, and other housing and different options were available in the community.
They finally moved the last inhabitants out, and then the building was empty for a while. And then the KCARC came out here, and the county turned it over to them to be their offices.
KCARC had already signed a 99-year lease on the outlying acreage surrounding the poor farm. Moving their offices into the building there just made sense for the corporation, which was growing in staff numbers. Board Director Jerry Coonrod has been with KCARC since the beginning.
It wasn't a real nice building when we got it, but it was pretty. It had the different ornamental stuff on it. And we liked it, and the people that worked there liked it. But as time went on, they didn't like it because things started leaking, the roof went bad, and there was just a multitude of things that had to be fixed.
KCARC officials in the county came to an impasse on a way forward with the property. KCARC was willing to make additional improvements, but only if the lease of the building was made to catch up with the existing 99-year lease on the rest of the acreage. But the county wanted to shake only for a 10-year lease. So with that, KCARC bought the former Johnson Controls building on 6th Street and moved their offices out of the Poor Farm building.
But we do thank the county for using it, because it was an opportunity for us that they give us that we had back in that 1980 that we wouldn't have had that availability.
It's been on the list for the last few years of
Yes.
the top 10 endangered historic
Yes,
structures
yes.
in the state.
Yes.
How does it feel to know that it is coming down instead of being resurrected into a new life?
Yeah, well, I'm saddened by it, of course. I can't help but think that perhaps someone with vision would have come and tried to rescue it, but that hasn't happened.
I really hate to see the building tore down, though. That's an old building. I was hoping somebody would buy it and fix it up, but it didn't happen.
Knox County Commissioner Kelly Streeter says the condition of the structure and the price tag that is attached to any improvements needed has made renovation possibilities impossible.
We've had many local interested parties that wanted to reuse that facility for the betterment of people in need in our community, just like it was intended in its first place. And that simply, they couldn't raise enough funds to match the needs of the building. And even back in 2016, developers at that time just said the magnitude of this building and the shape that it's in, inside the building it was built like a fortress, three brick wide walls. To move things and renovate, it's too much when we can invest in other buildings in other areas. Fast forward to today. You can't go inside now. It is now deemed unsafe by the county. It is really not salvageable.
That's why the Knox County Commissioners say they are moving forward with plans to demolish the historic building in order to build a new facility to house the county's emergency management agency and the 911 Central Dispatch Center at a much lower price tag.
That is a very large piece of ground. There's a large piece out front that has nothing on it currently. There is the old poorhouse that sits there currently, and then behind it is a barn that was used for a multitude of different things of storage, and there is also identified graves in the very back of the property.
Online records show as many as possibly 53 graves located out at the Poor Farm Cemetery, or Potter's Field, as it's also known. The dates for those burials range from 1896 to 1931.
I greatly understand, as well as the county commissioners understand, the historical nature of our whole community, and especially those that were the most in need of services at the time, and how that continued to be a place for individuals in our community. I wished we could have made it into something better, but to maintain those that did perish and or are entombed on that ground, we are taking great measure to survey and identify where that is before any type of addition or removal will be completed. And we do have plans to make sure we memorialize that particular facility and the history of it in some form. We are reaching out to some of our historical partners to help us with that, as well as with the township trustees, some options to, memorialize those grave sites. So that is what's most important. I know some of our plans have overshadowed that, but we will do everything within our power to maintain integrity of that facility, those grounds, and to move forward.
While this historic structure's days are numbered, the memory of what it once was still lives on for many in our community.
I've encountered a number of people that remember coming out here and visiting Uncle so-and-so or grandfather so-and-so, and they would have like birthday celebrations and things like that in their big dining room they had. And a lot of people thought that it provided a real service into the 1950s. People would go out and visit. On the other hand, I can remember Mom telling us, "You kids are going to drive me to the poorhouse," she would say. Of course, she didn't really mean it, but that's kind of what we remember about it from her.
And while many might think a property such as this one, which has seen so much life and activity during its useful years, might just have some other kind of life still left in it, Richard Day disagrees.
Any other little stories or anything that you remember about things that have happened here, or the culture or the lore of the structure?
It's not haunted. It is not haunted, except by vandals who come and paint obscenities on the walls and break windows and things like that. It's haunted by them, certainly.
You can see this episode and all future installments of History Vault on our Vincennes PBS YouTube channel. Our next episode of History Vault will focus on a local park whose baseball field hosted a game with the St. Louis Cardinals more than 100 years ago. You won't want to miss it. Now we'll introduce you to another new digital series we're working on, Trails and Crossroads. Engineer and photojournalist Dave Novak is also an outdoor enthusiast. In this series, Dave will take you along many outdoor adventures that aren't that far away. Our first stop is at our state's very first state park. Do you know which park holds that title? Find out now in our broadcast debut of Trails and Crossroads.
In 1916, it was the 100-year anniversary of Indiana statehood. So what does Indiana need? Well, a state park. McCormick's Creek became Indiana's first state park in 1916. But we have a rich history, not only being the first state park, but also because we're the birthplace of interpretation, which is what my job is, the first nature center, and also the State House was built from the limestone quarried here at McCormick's Creek. McCormick's Creek Canyon was developed during the Mississippian period, over 356 million years ago, much older than dinosaurs. Our Echo Canyon is 100 feet tall, and each of those layers kind of acts as like a storybook, each of them showing evidence of what life used to be on planet Earth then. If you fast forward during the glaciation period, a big glacier stopped just above the park boundary, and temperatures started to rise, and as it rose, water started gushing out from underneath the glacier. Well, that water had to go somewhere, and it traveled through cracks in the limestone bedrock that carved out our beautiful waterfall in the Echo Canyon that you have and enjoy today. This canyon travels along McCormick's Creek. McCormick's Creek is a long 5-mile scenic creek that starts at Flat Bottom Woods and runs along our waterfall and trickles out into the White River. Our land was owned by John McCormick, who owned a mill on top of McCormick's Creek, and that's how our park got its name.
Be sure to subscribe to our Vincent's PBS YouTube channel to make sure you don't miss our next episode of Trails and Crossroads. We have a direct link set up on our website, vincentspbs.org. Well, each year finds many Hoosier veterans looking to join the civilian workforce, but with that search can come extra hurdles for vets to clear. That's where a not-for-profit organization called INvets comes in to help. Here to explain how is INvets Veteran Engagement Manager, Chaze Patrick. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Nicole.
So I'm sure when many folks think about our Hoosier veterans, they think of the time that they spent serving our country and maybe not necessarily their transition back into civilian life. Tell us how INvets comes in to help bridge that process.
Well, INvets is here to kind of connect those dots, right? We realize that there are over 200,000 veteran and service members that get out of the military each year. And so a lot of it's like, I put this uniform on, what can I do, right? And so we work with them to combine all their experiences and help them find rewarding careers in Indiana. And then more so, help them find great communities that they can be a part of.
Okay, when we're talking about INvets as an organization, what are the pillars that is the basis of all the work that you guys do?
Well, we have 4, and some of those are meeting people where they are, helping them people get integrated within their community, and then of course, there's the aspect of having that respect and trust, right? Because you can't do anything without having that respect for a person and what they want within their life.
That's right. I know you recently spoke at the State of Workforce that we held here in Knox County with the Chamber, and you talked about how Indiana is really a place where veterans are kind of noticing and wanting to relocate to. How do you think that's come about, and what's it been like as folks have tried to find a community to live in?
When you really talk to somebody and you explain to them like, hey, there are other things outside of what you see here. Us, when we go out to the bases each week, we try to explain to them that there are opportunities everywhere, but specifically to Indiana, we have a lot of room to grow, and we're looking for people to fill those positions. And so coupled with that, and then the more so signatures with each community, and then the incentives, right, to come to Indiana. I mean, a lot of families are like, yes, let's make that move.
Okay. With their existing training during their time of service, I'm sure each veteran brings with them such a value that could be placed in different workforce areas. What are you seeing as you work with these veterans?
I'm seeing a mix. It's been more like manufacturing, healthcare, like your main higher demand occupations, but then also when we take our approach as far as helping people, find their career, we're really taking that personalized approach to kind of say, hey, you can do these things, which we can also look at these things, right? And kind of queuing them up to make sure that they have all the options when it comes to just, their path. When
you're talking with employers, what are some of the misconceptions that you're trying to dispel that folks may coincide with when they think of veterans?
Okay, so not all veterans have PTSD. That seems to be a huge misconception, right? Because we think of like the Hollywood and the dramatized, the war and everything else. Well, common misconception as far as how a person may, how can I say, reintegrate to civilian society. A lot of times there are things that they do within their jobs and within their missions, within their positions that are stressful, yes, but it also cues them up for professional opportunities down the road, right? It's just more so when we talk to employers, we try to make sure that the employers understanding the connections that that person in uniform can bring and how, from a long-term perspective, they have those skill sets that they're looking for.
Okay. What other barriers do you guys try to work through when you're trying to help place veterans in the workforce?
Language. I always say, know your audience, right? Do some research, find out what are particular technical languages that's used in certain industries and learn those things. I also recommend for those who are currently in uniform, go to conferences, right? Because within that, you talk to subject matter experts, right? And then you're also networking.
That's right.
And then you're also gaining your knowledge and building your network as you transition out. I have a younger brother right now. He is in his second enlistment in the Air Force. And I tell him now, I'm like, hey, I know you're looking at doing 20, but situations may change.
Right.
Still use those opportunities to develop yourself and build your network while you're still in, because you never know. I mean, you could get hurt or maybe the branch downsizes. So you're being proactive in helping your transition be successful.
And I know, that could translate to everyone and anyone. You don't know what life holds for you. And you don't know when you might meet somebody who could maybe open a door for you that you may not even realized was there.
Yes, very much true.
When we're looking at employers, what is the message that you want to bring to employers in our area here about why to consider hiring a veteran?
I feel that when we really look at the scope of all the jobs and all the skills, knowledge, and abilities that a person has, really kind of taking a look and saying, hey, help me make sense of what you've done and how you can connect yourself with our company. I think having that baseline discussion will help a lot, because you have to think there's over 800 different military occupations out there. And so coupled with their life experience, really taking a look and saying, hey, I see you. I know you've done some stuff for our country. Let's see if we can connect you with the right opportunity.
Okay. When you think about your time spent working with different veterans, I'm sure there's many success stories that you can recall. What is one of them that stood out to you?
Just recently, I got in connection with a gentleman. He was Special Forces, and we really kind of broke down his experience and some of the things that he can do in his civilian career, right? And so he had a really difficult time really kind of communicating his value to employers. And so with some constant digging and working with him, we were able to get him a very beneficial opportunity to where he's actually on his second day today. That we never would have thought would have came to fruition if we just didn't have that conversation. Plus, working with some of the hiring managers and recruiters, they're having a better understanding as far as how somebody's experience can be a benefit to their company. So those discussions really help. And with networking, makes everything that much more better.
When talking to the community here, we've got the employers, but how can other folks help support the mission of INvets and help veterans then kind of find a home here in our community?
I would say having those discussions with anybody that you may know is wearing a uniform or considering, and then making sure that as they go through their journey, that they're connecting with all the news that's local as far as new opportunities with businesses, or just in general, just connecting with those people that they know, and when they're looking at later on when they transition, they can tie the knot on that and make sure that they're finding that suitable employment. And we also help military spouses too.
Oh, yeah.
So, with that whole unit, making sure that everybody is really taking a look at their options and making that best decision moving forward.
Okay. When you think of the impact that you're having through INvets, and you look at the year coming forward, what are some goals that you guys have as an organization?
Collectively, we are looking at bringing 525 new residents to the state of Indiana.
Wow.
And with that, it's definitely a team effort. We're constantly out there to bases across the world telling them all about the great things in Indiana. And with that, that's really where the conversation starts, right? And then building those relationships with those transitioning centers helps to, get people to really think about what their options are down the road. Nobody ever thinks about Indiana. I'm initially from Chicago, but Indiana is now my home. And so I'm a Hoosier by choice. And so we're trying to make sure we spread that word about, hey, there may be a lot of states out there, but Indiana is a great place to, live, grow, and love, and make sure you make that commitment by being a Hoosier.
Okay. When you think about the work that you're doing, what does it mean to you when you see that vet successfully get a job, their family moves here? How does that make you feel?
It all comes full circle. I think when you go to a new place or you've been away from a place for a number of years sometimes, that you kind of lose sight of that community. And then when I talk to people and they come back and they're like, I feel good about this, but it's a little scary. And you're like, hey, I'm here, we're here for you, right? And getting them connected, I feel the reward based on them having their best potential when they get back. So I feel very appreciative as far as being part of that process in their life.
Okay, that's great. Anybody watching wants to learn more, wants to reach out, how can they do that?
They can go to our website, INvets.org. You can connect with any of our team. As far as support, if anybody wants to donate, they can go to INvets.org and donate to us as well. And then we also always have great events happening around the state. So be on the lookout because I'm sure there'll be one coming near you.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much for being here today, Chaz.
Thank you, Nicole.
And of course, if you would like more information about INvets, we have a link for you to follow on our website, vincentspbs.org. And now for our final focus. The Vincennes Historical Half Marathon was recently held on the roads and streets of our community. If you didn't get a chance to run in the race, no worries. We're going to take you onto the course right now, thanks to a first-person point of view captured by Joe Bobe, who graciously strapped on a GoPro camera for us to be able to share this view with you. Take a look.
Here we go. Let's go.
There we go, Joe.
Well, I hope you're not too exhausted after running that race. I don't know about you, but I felt like we had a record-breaking pace, right? Thanks to Joe for letting us tag along. We hope you enjoyed the episodes from our new digital series, History Vault and Trails and Crossroads. Be sure to subscribe to our Vincennes PBS YouTube channel to watch our new digital series as episodes are posted. And follow us on all of our social media accounts to catch sneak peeks, outtakes, and more on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. That wraps it up for this edition of First City Focus. For everyone here at Vincennes PBS, I'm Nicole Carey. We'll see you again next week.